Top of the hour, and this morning we're marking a solemn day in American history. Former President Jimmy Carter has died at the age of 100. While his time in office was fleeting, the single term he served from 1977 to 1981 made an impact on the world that was long-lasting. Carter championed humanitarian causes, and he's being remembered as a compassionate, caring man whose efforts to better the lives of Americans, the less fortunate, defined his legacy for decades after leaving Washington. From humble beginnings at the family peanut farm in Plains, Georgia, to the Naval Academy, to climbing the political ranks at the state level and making it all the way to the presidency, Carter's unyielding values, steadfast leadership, and down-home disposition led many across the nation and the globe to consider him not only president, but a friend.
I think that what Jimmy Carter is an example of is just simple decency. Simple decency. And I think that's what the rest of the world looks to America for.
And throughout this hour, we'll be thumbing through President Carter's cherished life and legacy as the world remembers a commander-in-chief like no other. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Joe and Savannah today. And we begin this morning with tributes and memories pouring in after the death of former President Jimmy Carter. He passed away peacefully Sunday at 100 years old. The 39th president of the United States spent his final days surrounded by family in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, where he died nearly 2 years after entering hospice care. He was the longest living president in American history and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Last night, President Biden spoke about the passing of the man he called a dear friend. Let's listen.
This is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories. Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman and humanitarian. And Jill and I lost a dear friend. I've been hanging out with Jimmy Carter for over 50 years, it dawned on me. Jimmy Carter stands as a model of what it means to live a life of meaning and purpose, a life of principle, faith, and humility. His life dedicated to others. I'll always cherish having seen Jimmy and Rosalind Carter together. Theirs was a love affair of the ages. While we'll miss them both dearly.
President Biden also signed a proclamation to begin the process of a state funeral for Carter, which is expected to span several days. The flag at the White House and federal buildings across the country have been lowered to half-staff as the nation mourns. And Jimmy Carter rose from state politics in Georgia to serve in the White House from 1977 to 1981. His single presidential term was marked both by highs and lows, including achievements in foreign policy and economic troubles at home. But after leaving office, he dedicated the next 40-plus years of his life to humanitarian work around the globe. NBC nightly news anchor Lester Holt has a look back at his life and legacy.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
He went from being Jimmy Who to winning the White House itself, then struggled with crises overseas and a troubled economy at home. A one-term president whose time as ex-president was the longest.
Thank you all.
Among the most active in American history, becoming the first American president to celebrate his 100th birthday. James Earl Carter Jr., he always went by Jimmy, was born in small-town Plains, Georgia, growing up on a farm without electricity or indoor plumbing. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy, studied nuclear physics, worked in the nuclear submarine program. Carter married Rosalind Smith, a friend of his sister's, and she became his lifelong partner. When his father died, Carter left his military career and went home to run the family peanut farm. But he wanted something more. He got into politics, Georgia state senator, then governor.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
In the Old South, Carter was something new.
The time for racial discrimination is over.
He attracted national attention.
Would our first challenger enter and sign in, please?
But was still enough of an unknown in 1973 to appear on What's My Line? 1 year later,
I'd like to announce that I am a candidate for president.
after Watergate, the country was ready for a Washington outsider who said America deserved a government as good as its people. A born-again Christian who promised voters, "I will never lie to you."
We now have a projected winner, James Earl Carter of the state of Georgia, elected the next president of the United States.
Carter narrowly defeated Gerald Ford, becoming the first president from the Deep South in more than a century.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
He started with a common touch, an inaugural walk to the White House, a cardigan sweater to talk to the nation about the energy crisis.
There's no way that I or anyone else in the government can solve our energy problems if you are not willing to help.
He became a champion of human rights.
No member of the United Nations can claim that mistreatment of its citizens is solely its own business.
And the Camp David Accord showed Carter at his best, idealistic, tenacious, leading marathon talks between Egypt's Anwar Sadat and Israel's Menachem Begin, achieving a peace treaty that is still in place today. But closer to home, Carter's inexperience and his distaste for political rough and tumble became serious handicaps. And when the economy tanked, so did Carter's popularity. He seemed to blame Americans themselves.
The erosion of our confidence in the future.
He looked weak, photographed collapsing during a run. And it got worse. In Iran, scores of Americans were taken hostage.
I'm a candidate for president of the United States.
Ted Kennedy announced he would challenge Carter for the nomination. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan, prompting Carter to boycott the Moscow Olympics. Above all, the hostage crisis consumed Carter's final year in office.
Any encouraging news from Iran, Mr. President? No.
A mission to rescue the hostages ended in tragedy.
8 Americans had died, an unknown number of other Americans had been wounded.
It was my decision to attempt the rescue operation. The responsibility is fully my own.
Still hoping for a second term, Carter beat Kennedy, only to face an even more formidable opponent.
I'll bring new hope to America.
Ronald Reagan projected optimism and confidence, and he didn't think much of Carter.
There you go again.
Jimmy Carter lost in a landslide. And though he finally negotiated the release of the hostages, they weren't officially freed until just after he left office. Through it all, Carter was sustained by his faith.
You were faced with some huge crises as president. Did you drop down to your knees and pray?
Often, yes, often. In fact, I prayed more per day, per hour, while I was president than any other 4 years in my life.
And his defeat marked the beginning of a remarkable post-presidency. He established the Carter Center, committed to advancing human rights and democracy. He even got some respect from an old adversary.
You gave of yourself to this country, gracing the White House with your passion and intellect and commitment. For that, Mr. President, I thank you, and your country thanks you.
Carter built houses for the poor. He monitored elections, battled disease, and worked for peace around the world, sometimes at odds with his successors. He wrote dozens of books, and in 2002 was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. An extraordinary ex-president, proud of his years in the White House.
Kept the peace. We never went to war. We told the truth. Never lied to the American people. Never misled the American people. So in general terms, I feel perfectly at ease with my term.
Carter was diagnosed with cancer, determined to beat it while maintaining his typical collected demeanor.
I think I have been as blessed as any human being in the world. Everything's been a blessing for me. So I'm thankful and hopeful.
Despite the diagnosis, he continued building houses alongside Rosalind and marked their 75th wedding anniversary in 2021.
75 years, I can't predict.
Rosalind died 2 years later, marking the longest presidential marriage in history. In 2024, Carter marked another milestone, his 100th birthday, with an outpouring of gratitude for his life of service. He brought that devotion to everything he did for family and for country until the end.
Our thanks to Lester Holt for that report. Meanwhile, former President Carter will be honored with a full state funeral, which will include ceremonies in Atlanta and at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Well, NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar joins us now from Atlanta with details on this state funeral. Priya, good morning. So President Carter's funeral is set to start there in his home state of Georgia and take place over the course of several days. How is he going to be honored in his home state?
Yeah, that's right, Stephen. Well, you know, he is very beloved here in Georgia. As we heard in Lester's piece, you know, he was very much unknown outside of the state of Georgia before he made his way to the White House. And here outside of the Carter Center, as the news spread yesterday afternoon, people were coming from around Atlanta to put flowers, candles, and even a chalkboard that said, "We love you, President Carter," outside of the Carter Center. And we are expecting that there will be observances in his honor, both here in Atlanta, also in his hometown of Plains, and of course in Washington, D.C. as well. You know, he entered public service here in Georgia, first in the state Senate and then in the governor's mansion. And every step of the way in his professional career, he came back to Georgia, helping his family's business, as Lester mentioned, on the peanut farms of Georgia. And many of those characteristics that he's so remembered for, including his humility, his down-to-earth nature, are really a result, many people believe here in Georgia, of his upbringing and his childhood here. They really feel as though he is sort of the embodiment of the American dream, coming from those humble beginnings, not having electricity or running water on that peanut farm and making it all the way to the White House. So people here in Georgia are incredibly proud of him. Governor Kemp releasing a statement yesterday saying that he showed Georgia's impact to the world. And of course, the flags here in Georgia, as well as in Washington, D.C., are at half-staff today.
Georgia is certainly proud of him. Such an inspiring life story. Priya, do we know what's in store for D.C. when it comes to these funeral plans? And do we know ultimately where he's set to be buried?
So a lot of those details are being ironed out right now, and we are being told by folks from the Carter Center that we should have more of those logistics in the coming hours today. But we know that at some point his body will be making its way from Plains, Georgia, here to Atlanta, where, of course, as I mentioned, there will be a public memorial to remember his life and honor his legacy here in Atlanta. Ultimately, Stephen, his body will be taken to Washington, D.C. for those state funeral proceedings. We know that President Biden will be delivering a eulogy, and we can expect that that will take place at the National Cathedral, which is historically where all of our former presidents have had their state funerals. But eventually his body will come back here to Plains, Georgia, where he will be buried next to his wife, Rosalind, who was buried there just last year after she passed in November.
Together for more than 80 years. So glad they'll be reunited there in Plains. And Priya, I know world leaders have been reacting to the death of former President Carter, including President-elect Donald Trump. He posted on Truth Social last night saying, in part, the challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. So what other notable reactions are you seeing this morning?
Yeah, so we're hearing from world leaders around the globe, including the Egyptian president, the Israeli president, who both in their statements that they released remarked on his very notable achievement when he was in the White House of course, negotiating the peace agreement and the Camp David Accords between both Egypt and Israel. We also heard from French President Emmanuel Macron, who said throughout his life, Jimmy Carter has been a steadfast advocate for the rights of the most vulnerable and has tirelessly fought for peace. France sends its heartfelt thoughts to his family and the American people. Even world leaders like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau from Canada have weighed in, sending their condolences to Jimmy Carter's family. He, of course, is survived by his 4 children, his 11 grandchildren, and his 14 great-grandchildren. So condolences and remembrances coming in from around the world and, of course, here in the state of Georgia. Stephen.
And much more to come on those remembrances. All right, Priya, for us from Atlanta. Thank you. Well, turning now to the latest in that horrific, deadly plane crash in South Korea, we do want to warn you, some of what you're about to see could be upsetting. 179 people were killed when a flight arriving from Bangkok crash landed on a tarmac at South Korea's Muan International Airport over the weekend. That plane skidded across the runway and burst into flames as it crashed into a wall. According to South Korea's National Fire Agency, 2 of the flight's crew members survived. A major investigation is now underway into what caused that fiery crash. NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from London with more on this. Megan, good morning to you. So many questions about how this happened. What more can you tell us at this hour?
Yes, Stephen, good morning. We are learning new information this morning from South Korea's Minister of Land, Transportation and Aviation, who says that just before 9 o'clock local time, the pilot of that aircraft indicated that there was a bird strike. Moments later, he issued a mayday and notified the air traffic control tower that he was going to go for a go-around. Moments later, about 2 minutes later, that's when we see on that footage that aircraft making that belly landing, just skidding along that runway before veering off and crashing into that barricade that was there. Now, the minister says that the cause of that belly landing was because of the bird strike. But look, we've been speaking with many aviation experts who still question why that landing gear did not deploy, even despite a possible bird strike. This is something that aviation experts say is relatively common, and that it should not have stopped the landing gear from being deployed. So again, a lot of lingering questions there. We do understand that 2 of those black boxes have been recovered from the wreckage of that aircraft. They've been sent to a lab to try and analyze and see if they'll be able to get information off of the boxes. So a lot of information, of course, still to come. In addition, we know that the United States is sending a team led by the NTSB comprised of FAA investigators, including Boeing investigators, because this was a Boeing aircraft, to assist the South Koreans with this ongoing investigation, Stephen.
Hopefully those black boxes will provide more information, Megan. I know these 2 crew members seem to have miraculously survived. Do we know how they were able to make it out of that crash? And do we know what condition they're in?
I know. I mean, when you see that footage, it's just crazy to even think that anybody was able to survive. But we understand that these 2 crew members, a woman and a man, they were in the back of that aircraft, and they managed to be pulled out of the wreckage. They were conscious. We don't yet know the condition of the woman, but we do understand that that male who was pulled from the wreckage was taken into the hospital. He's currently in the ICU right now. Doctor just gave a statement saying that there's cervical spine immobilization, there's traumatic spine injuries, there's swelling of the spine, there's multiple fractures of bones and ribs, not to mention PTSD. But the bottom line here is we're talking about 2 survivors, and after seeing that footage, it really is remarkable that anyone managed to escape.
Incredible that they were both able to get out of there. Megan Fitzgerald for us. Thank you so much. Well, new details now in another deadly plane crash. Russian President Vladimir Putin apologized to the president of Azerbaijan for the crash of a commercial airliner that killed 38 people in Kazakhstan back on Christmas Day. The Kremlin said on Saturday that Putin, quote, apologized for the fact the incident occurred in Russian airspace. Putin's apology comes amid accusations that the plane was shot down by Russian air defense systems. However, Putin stopped well short of taking responsibility for that incident. 2 U.S. military officials told NBC News on Friday that the crash may have been caused by Russian missiles, citing intelligence that Russia misidentified the plane and shot it down. Well, this morning, at least 4 people are dead after a series of severe storms barreled across the South over the weekend. Those storms spawned multiple tornadoes from Texas to Georgia. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park is in hard-hit Mississippi with more than 25,000 people who still don't have power.
Dude, this is bananas.
The South slammed with severe weather.
Stop, what the frick?
Nearly 40 possible tornadoes.
The tornado was on the ground.
One.
Just hope it breaks up.
After another, tearing through Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. The outbreak ripping apart homes, even a school, winds over 70 miles an hour. Uprooting trees and downing power lines, cutting off electricity to hundreds of thousands. In western Mississippi, firefighters and others picking through the rubble of this home with their bare hands. In the city of Brandon, Wendy Freeman is grateful to be alive, nearly getting crushed by a tree that toppled onto her house.
The roof is falling in on me. I mean, stuff is falling on my head and my face. The dog is right there beside me. He won't leave me.
You must have been terrified.
That's it. I was panicking.
This door got ripped off the hinge right there.
For Michael Ibarra's family near Houston, a late Christmas celebration turning into a nightmare.
And we were about to open our presents. We just hear this wind outside, and we hear like these rocks throwing against the window. And all of a sudden, in the living room, the roof just pops off.
All that violent weather now causing major headaches for some holiday travelers, with hundreds of flights canceled and thousands more delayed. The storm's dangerous march east. Violent weather now reaching Florida and pounding North Carolina. An unrelenting weekend of deadly storms, with millions now picking up the pieces.
And the cleanup is just beginning in places like Brandon, Mississippi, where an apparent tornado touched down, toppling trees, splitting this home in half. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Back to you.
All right, Kathy Park, thanks so much. And sticking with the weather now, but looking ahead for how it could affect travel plans or New Year's Eve. Meteorologist Angie Lassman joins us now with more. Good morning, Angie.
Hi, Stephen. Good morning to you. We've got a couple of trouble spots that likely are going to make travel a little iffy in a couple of locations. Let's talk about one of them. That's across parts of the plains. This is where we're going to see kind of a new system emerge and take shape over the next couple of days and impact some folks with some rain and potentially some snow. You can see that's happening in parts of the plains right now. We've also got kind of a mix of some snow showers lingering across the Great Lakes in this last bit of impacts from that same system that really caused us all the trouble with the severe weather over the past couple of days. That's going to kick out, but you'll still have to deal with some heavy rain across parts of New England, at least for the day today. One note, on the backside of this system, winds ramp up. This is especially going to be prevalent across portions of western New York. So 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts or higher will be possible. That also goes for parts of the plains. We're going to see those elevated winds, and you can see the fire danger is there and prevalent for 9 million people. We've got the alerts at this time stretching from Denver down to portions of southern Texas. A couple of ingredients to kind of put us in play for the potential for some fires to start and spread quickly. We, of course, have those strong wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour, but we've also got really dry air in place. Temperatures are going to be on the warm side today, and we've got some dry vegetation. So all of those things are going to play a part in what we watch unfold there when it comes to the fire danger today. Big picture look across the country as we gear up for the end of 2024, of course, and heading into 2025. Not a whole lot going on besides this little bit of rain that I told you about across parts of the plains in New England. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine across the south. No need for the umbrellas across parts of the southwest. And that really goes into tomorrow, too. We'll see lots of sunshine, essentially, for most of the western half of the country. It's this storm system, though, that is going to bring us a bit of rain as we gear up for the daytime hours of New Year's Eve. That storm system could potentially impact us into the evening hours, but this is really where it'll be centered across parts of the Ohio Valley and out east through the daytime hours. Now, as we get closer to midnight, potential rain for the ball drop, of course, in Times Square. That'll be iffy. We'll watch to see exactly how that unfolds. But otherwise, most of the country clear. We will see some chilly conditions, especially across parts of the northern plains, where notice temperatures will be into the teens. So extra layers will be needed for folks that are celebrating at midnight. Now, New Year's Day, first day of 2025. Let's start with the good news. Lots of sunshine across the south, really the whole southern tier of the country. Going to see plenty of sunshine. Temperatures will kind of be right where they should be for this time of year, but we'll gear up for another storm out into portions of the Pacific Northwest. That brings some rain. It brings some snow. And we've got also another area that we're still going to be watching, that same area that left us with the potential for some rain at midnight. It'll still be kicking around for New Year's Day, but parts of northern New England will have to deal with that. So still going to need the rain gear. We maybe could see some snow showers tucked in there, but for the most part, it'll be windy and chilly on the backside of that. And then we'll get going with the first day of 2025, just like that.
It happens, doesn't it? You can't stop it. It's coming.
No, it's coming. That's how the weather works.
I'll see you in Times Square, right? New Year's Eve?
Oh,
Is this where you're
Stephen, I don't
We've
think
talked
so.
about this before, yeah. I feel like we had the same conversation last
I think so.
All right, Angie, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.